Harley? What are you doing here?
Yeah, with Batty and the Clink, I thought you silly rodents might need a little help. Don't worry, Nightwing. You still have the best-looking ass out of all of us.
Let's give her a chance.
If only Gotham Knights was as fun as that show is. But anyways, welcome back, true believers, and all you merry Marvelites, but specifically all you DC fans, to a very interesting video relating to Gotham Knights, where today I am giving my quote-unquote review of the game after having beaten it to 100% completion, or at the very least, I did complete the main campaign and all the case files with the side villains of Harley Quinn, Mr. Freeze, and Clayface, and did a few extra side missions in the city while upgrading my gear and getting some different suits for each of the knights, but pretty much I have played the entirety of the game to its max amount of completion in regards to its narrative campaign. But I do say all of that to indicate that even though I personally played through this game and am not the biggest fan of it, if you are a fan of Gotham Knights, that is 100% fine, and I am glad that you did enjoy your time with this game. And coming from me personally, even though I mainly cover Marvel games and Spider-Man related news, I am still a pretty big fan of Batman and the DC brand as a whole. Especially after playing through the entirety of the Batman Arkham franchise from Rocksteady, this was the next step within the Batman series of games, even though this does not take place within the Arkham universe. However, I still ended up paying $70 to buy this game on a PlayStation 5 on launch day, so I do feel entitled at the very least to give my honest and overall opinion about Gotham Knights as a whole. And joining me on this video is actually one of the amazing co-founders of the Spidey Squad, and another individual who did play through Gotham Knights in its entirety with none other than Franco Greco, aka Stealth Gamer. What is up, dude? How you doing today?
I'm doing very well, man. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a blast being on the channel doing awesome videos, and I'm very excited for today's topic. It's going to be an awesome one.
Indeed. So for this video, we're just going to have more of a laid-back discussion about where Franco and I stand with Gotham Knights, also knowing that the game will continue to add more content down the line, with the Heroic Assault mode scheduled sometime later this month in November, which is going to be a free update. But basically, we are going to give you our overall thoughts on the game as it stood when it released on October 21st, and after having beat the game in its entirety, and also another very interesting topic pertaining to the future of DC and Marvel video games, but mainly within the general realm of superhero games as a whole. Now, before I dive into the majority of issues and complaints that I do have surrounding this game, Franco, what do you currently feel, or what are your feelings towards Gotham Knights after having beaten it to its max completion with the story, and what you feel about it after also playing through the other Batman Arkham games that we have received in the past?
Okay, so for me personally, while I do have my overall problems with Gotham Knights as a whole, I actually had a very fun experience playing through the game, experiencing the story, and for the most part, the gameplay is pretty fun when you get the hang of it, although I still think it could have used a little bit more polish, specifically with the heroic traversal and combat moves that you can do in the game. But overall, as in general, my overall thoughts is that it's an okay experience, and I would say, in my personal opinion, to wait for a sale for a very good price, especially seeing how the game will be getting a free update with the 4-player co-op mode later on at the end of November. But overall, if I were to give this game a rating out of 10, I'd probably give it a 7. While it's still good, it does have its problems with the obvious elephant in the room being the game locked at 30 frames per second on console and no performance mode, unless WB Montreal decides to add that in a future update. I think this game needs a little bit more time in the oven and a little bit more polish to really make this the next level of quality, like how Rocksteady handled the Batman Arkham games, which is some of my favorite games of all time, specifically with Arkham City being in my top 10 favorite games of all time. It really did miss a lot of the marks that I was looking forward to this game, but still I'm keeping my fingers crossed that WB Montreal will pull through, especially with this 4-player co-op mode that they're adding at the end of November. And I really hope that WB Montreal listens to the fans and really listens to their criticisms and feedback to really make this game the best that it can possibly be.
So Franco, you are a much better man than I will ever be when it comes to this game, because after I've played through it and how I experienced it, which, by the way, I played through the entirety of the game on hard difficulty, which is something I do not recommend after having done that for myself. I genuinely feel like this is one of the least enjoyable superhero games I've ever played. And I don't say that with joy or passion like, haha, this game sucked and I didn't like it. No, it does upset me that I did not like this game because I was going in with an open mind, hoping that it would be good, but it does sit alongside some of my least other favorite superhero games like Spider-Man Edge of Time, which, in my opinion, is the worst Spider-Man game of all time. I know people hate The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which I also don't like, but I don't like Edge of Time at all, as well as Marvel's Avengers, and now Gotham Knights kind of sits alongside that. In essence, my thoughts on this game do share very similar perceptions towards the IGN review that was given for it, where they gave it a 5 out of 10. That's exactly what I would give it because of the game's many, many downfalls, which in my opinion relates to the extremely predictable and forgettable story relating to the Bat family and Batman's quote-unquote death, which, yes, he is dead by the end of the game, but everyone, pretty much, spoilers by the way, saw him coming back to life via the Lazarus Pit. It was expected at that point. The open world is dead. There are barely any civilians or any signs of life within Gotham City at all, but there are at least, I would say, a nice variety of crimes with different factions to face off against, and each Bat family member does feel relatively different during their playstyles, but the downside of that is that each of their combat systems and gameplay mechanics are extremely clunky and slow. It only gets a bit better when you get the momentum abilities, but for the most part, the basic combat is so bare bones and leaves a lot to be left desired for how each knight plays within the field of combat. And what I find is the worst offense of this is locking the traversal mechanics for each Gotham Knight, besides the Bat Bike, I would say, behind the knighthood skill trees where you are forced to grind through crimes and side activities to simply unlock the skill tree and get the basic traversal ability that each knight should have right off the bat. As a comparison, it would be like if you have to defeat Kingpin in Spider-Man PS4, but also collect all the backpacks in the city and defeat all the demon bases, and then you will be able to web swing. Imagine how insane that would be in Spider-Man. That's exactly how it is here within Gotham Knights. And in my opinion, even though this game was marketed as either a single-player or cooperative experience where you can play the game with another friend, and like Franco said, there will be the 4-player Heroic Assault mode added later this month in November, all the bosses within the game are pretty much tailored for a co-op only experience. They're almost treated like raid bosses in a way, since they're nothing but giant damage sponges, and there is no strategy or tactics to defeat them in a unique way, like what we have seen in the previous Arkham games. And I'm not here to compare the Gotham Knights game to the Batman Arkham games, but the simple fact of the matter is, all you do with each of the bosses is whittle away at their health bars, lower their ability to damage you, and just keep fighting them and simply hitting them with your basic attack combos to then defeat them in the most boring way possible. And in my opinion, I find that extremely underwhelming and rather uninspired, especially considering the great boss fights that Warner Bros. Montreal already managed to achieve within Batman Arkham Origins, which was a great game in my opinion within the Arkham series that is very underrated. And even though this is not an Arkham game, I still find it really upsetting to see where the game has landed in terms of how they executed each of these boss fights, and also how the gameplay shaped up for a modern day AAA superhero game as a whole. And this, everybody, is where we get to the main topic of discussion for the video, where, yes, even though Gotham Knights is the primary game we're talking about, I did want to just elaborate more and kind of shed more light on the overall subject that is the current state of superhero video games. And Franco is going to be helping me out with this as well, with both Marvel and DC. For where we stand now, even though you can count other games that have released since Batman Arkham Knight, like Injustice 2, and even some of the Batman Telltale stuff, we haven't received any major AAA DC superhero game since Batman Arkham Knight in 2015, which is obviously viewed in the same realm as other current-day modern AAA superhero games like Spider-Man PS4, Miles Morales, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, and of course the most infamous Marvel's Avengers. But just saying those games right off the bat is already showing a clear issue with how DC is managing their superhero gaming titles. Recently, we already know that Insomniac Games is making Marvel's Spider-Man 2 and Marvel's Wolverine, as well as bringing Spider-Man and Miles Morales to PC. We recently got a Game of the Year contender, in my opinion, with Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy in 2021, and we also know that we're going to be receiving some pretty major heavy-hitting AAA single-player superhero games in the coming years with the Captain America and Black Panther game, as well as the brand new EA Marvel games starting with Iron Man. And even this year in 2022, we're going to be ending off the year in December with Marvel's Midnight Suns. But on the side of DC, we recently received Gotham Knights, which did not do that well in terms of review scores. We do know that we're going to be receiving Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League from Rocksteady in 2023, and the main game that I'm looking forward to the most is none other than the Wonder Woman game developed by Monolith, which in my opinion is going to be a Game of the Year contender, especially knowing that game is also going to feature a AAA, single-player, narrative-driven, third-person, action-adventure, open-world Wonder Woman game. But that element right there is the exact point that I want to make when it comes to these massive AAA superhero games that are coming from both Marvel and DC. And seeing how much of a creative liberty that Marvel is taking with their properties, and also seeing how many of these games are coming out, I definitely think that this issue is not a matter of quality or quantity, but rather focusing on both at the same time. After having waiting 7 years since the release of Batman Arkham Knight to just get another AAA DC game to only then launch with mediocre to underwhelming reviews is definitely a very hard pill to swallow for any and all massive Batman fans. Meanwhile, Marvel isn't afraid to hand out all their different creative IPs to several different types of developers to simply offer players a different type of superhero game that they may or may not enjoy. But at the very least, we are getting loads of Marvel games as it stands right now, and even more to look forward to in the current future. So knowing that DC is having a major problem with this, it's definitely going to make the overall reviews and critical reception of Gotham Knights a lot harder on WB Montreal for them to carry.
When it comes to DC games, it's all being made under developers within the WB Games umbrella, instead of what Marvel is doing with expanding to other publishers and developers such as EA, Amy Hennig's new studio at Skydance New Media, Insomniac making both Marvel's Spider-Man 2 and Marvel's Wolverine, as well as with the previous partnership with Square Enix, Marvel's Avengers, and Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. But in the case with DC, the only games that we have looking forward to releasing down the line is Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League by Rocksteady and the Wonder Woman game being developed by Monolith. But overall, as a fan of DC, when it comes to their upcoming games, with Gotham Knights, I felt like it was an okay experience, which in my opinion could have been a little bit better, but overall, in my opinion, it wasn't as bad as some critics make it out to be. I think that WB Games needs to branch out and give other developers a chance to create something truly special, seeing how these creators can take these beloved characters and truly making an unforgettable experience for players to enjoy. Just like how Rocksteady took care of the Batman Arkham games with that amount of love and passion, as well as seeing Insomniac put that amount of love and care into the Marvel Spider-Man games. And if WB Games decides to take this route, I think that they can truly give developers a chance to create such incredible, rich, and unforgettable stories for players to enjoy for the years to come.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest point here is while Gotham Knights has its fans, and I'm not trying to make you as a fan, Franco, or anyone else watching dissuade your opinion about the game if you do like it or not, I'm simply saying that after waiting 7 years since the last release of a major AAA DC game with Batman Arkham Knight, or if you're a WB Games Montreal fan, nearly 10 years since their last game of WB Games Montreal's Batman Arkham Origins, which came out in 2013, nearly a decade later, we have Gotham Knights. And there has not been a single review that I have seen that has said that it is great or astounding or rather amazing in any way, but simply that it is passable at the very best. And for a game like that to only receive mediocre reception instead of something like astronomically incredible amongst the general fan base for Batman or the Gotham Knights fan base itself, I definitely think is a pretty big issue, especially since what you brought up is that WB Games is only focusing on their inner-owned studios that are underneath the WB Publishing banner, which is Rocksteady, WB Games Montreal, and Monolith. And I'm sure they have a few others, but we see Marvel taking the initiative, planning to broaden their overall horizons when it comes to partnering with several different developers working on these massive AAA projects that aren't afraid to take risks. Even though EA is not the most well-regarded gaming developer and publisher, they are still willing to make an action-adventure-centric Iron Man game with 2 other major projects just like that currently in the works. And of course, people are beyond hyped for Marvel's Spider-Man 2 and Wolverine, and even some people are looking forward to Marvel's Midnight Suns, as well as the very anticipated Captain America and Black Panther World War II game. And only knowing that even though WB Montreal does have another secret project in the works, the current state of DC games with the release of Gotham Knights doesn't necessarily get me hyped for any of their future projects. But in terms of catching up with where Marvel Games is at right now, I definitely think that that is a big challenge that they will have to eventually conquer. But regardless, only time will tell to see how that turns out. But with all that said, everyone, that's the video Franco and I both have for you today, and please let us know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. What'd you think of Gotham Knights? Did you enjoy the game more than most people, or do you agree with my sentiments towards the game in where it wasn't all that amazing and pretty much underwhelmed you on every level imaginable? I know that might come across very aggressive and not all that kind, but again, I did purchase this game with my own hard-earned money, and I am willing to give it a fair shake, which also means being as honest and critical as possible. So while I'm not a fan of how the base game set up itself and what it delivered, I am looking forward to where the game will expand itself with the upcoming Heroic Assault mode, and am just simply hoping that the next DC game with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League will be better than this. But again, huge thanks to the one and only Franco Greco, aka Stealth Gamer, for joining me on this video. Thank you so much, dude. I had a great time.
Thank you so much for having me, man. It was an honor to be here. It's always fun doing these types of discussion videos, and fingers crossed that WB Games can turn this around with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League releasing next year.
Be sure to follow Franco on all of his social media pages, which I will leave as a link in the description below. Thank you all so much for watching. Leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you did enjoy, and for more DC games videos like this in the future. And without further ado, peace out.